From Quito, Ecuador, my name is Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South, the evening news brief on Telesur English. We start this new edition right now. Two days after he was pardoned on medical grounds, the health of the former Peruvian president, Alberto Fujimori, has improved. Doctors treating him at the Japanese Peruvian clinic in Lima say he has been moved out of intensive care and may be allowed home if he continues to get better. Peru's president, Pedro Pablo Kuczynski, has been accused of granting the pardon as part of a political deal to save himself from impeachment.
The former president has been transferred out of the intensive care unit to an intermediary unit and continued his treatment. Depending on if his evolution continues favorably, his attending doctors will look at when he can leave.
Earlier in the day, Fujimori, who was serving 25 years for human rights abuses and corruption, published a video in which he thanked President Kuczynski.
No puedo dejar de expresar
I have to express my profound gratitude for this difficult step that the President has taken. This commits me, in this new stage of my life, to support his call for reconciliation. Thank you very much, President Kuczynski, for this magnanimous gesture that has brought me comfort.
For his part, President Kuczynski went on television to justify his decision. He recognized that Alberto Fujimori had been responsible for many human rights abuses, but said he couldn't allow him to die in prison.
I want to tell you that perhaps this has been the most difficult decision of my life. It is about the health and chances of life of a former president of Peru, who, having committed excesses and grave errors, was sentenced and has already served 12 years of his sentence.
Protests continue into the night on Monday after a massive Christmas Day march against the pardon. Demonstrators scuffled with police outside Fujimori's clinic as they denounced what they called a dirty deal between the president and the members of the party led by Alberto Fujimori's daughter, Keiko. 3 members of Congress for President Kuczynski's own party resigned over the decision, and the former presidential candidate of the left, Verónica Mendoza, called it treason.
It was a last-minute call on social media after news that the former president, Alberto Fujimori, imprisoned for crimes against humanity, had been freed. Many citizens decided to leave their Christmas celebrations and come out to reject what they called a fraudulent pardon.
This has taken us by surprise like a time bomb, because we didn't think he'd do it. He said he wouldn't pardon him.
I'm totally outraged. It is shameful that we have such an utterly corrupt government, which sabotages us and ruins our holiday celebration with our families.
This is clearly an under-the-table agreement between Fujimori supporters and our current government. I'm truly disappointed in the president, and I hope he changes his attitude. That's why I'm protesting here today.
Relatives of the victims of the Barrios Altos and La Cantuta killings were among the protesters. This was the case for which Fujimori was sentenced to 25 years in prison. He wasn't yet served half his sentence and will be released under what's officially called a humanitarian pardon for health reasons.
These negotiations between the Fujimori family and President Kuczynski to benefit him with an illegal pardon does not meet the conditions laid down by the law.
They've acted in a biased way, because we should remember that one of the members of the medical board was also one of Fujimori's private doctors.
The announcement of the pardon surprised even the members of the governing party in Congress. The procedure was rushed through in 2 weeks, when it normally takes 9 months. For human rights lawyer Carlos Rivera, this is an illegal pardon because of grave irregularities in the legal and medical grounds.
What the regulations for presidential pardons lay down is that there must be a particularly severe health situation that endangers the life of the individual. Now the doctors who analyzed the report from the medical board confirm that he has normal issues for his age, but nothing that could end up killing Alberto Fujimori. That's why I believe there are political, legal, and medical grounds that fully support the report that will be presented to the Inter-American Court on Tuesday.
Somos las hijas de las indígenas que no pudiste esterilizar.
Human rights organizations and citizens in general trust that the International Court of Justice will hold the Peruvian state accountable and revoke the pardon given to Alberto Fujimori, because it was part of a political pact for impunity.
Former Peru Soccer Federation President Manuel Burga has been found not guilty of racketeering by a U.S. jury in New York. Burga was charged with taking bribes in exchange for awarding valuable marketing and media rights to international soccer matches. Burga was one of the first 3 men to stand trial on charges brought by U.S. prosecutors in 2015 as part of investigations into the World Soccer governing body, FIFA. The 2 others were convicted on Friday.
They had over 30 million pages of documents in this case, and hundreds of witnesses, and thousands of files that we had to go through. To say it was a Herculean task is really to understate it, but we won. And it was the right thing for the jury to do. I really believe that. The evidence just, the case was an important case, and the government did a very good and thorough job, but at least as to this gentleman over here to my left, I think the jury saw the truth.
Colombia's largest remaining guerrilla group, the ELN, has accused the government of breaking the terms of its truce. The National Liberation Army says it has withdrawn from the verification body meant to oversee the bilateral ceasefire because of government intransigence. Last week, President Santos said he hoped to extend the bilateral ceasefire beyond its current expiration date on January 9th. Our correspondent in Bogotá, Lorena Hoyos, has more.
On January 9th, the ceasefire agreement between the ELN and the Colombian government is coming to an end. Several social sectors from the communities that are still hit by the armed conflict have insisted that the ceasefire should be prolonged and have said that this would bring a positive atmosphere for the upcoming negotiations that will take place in Quito, Ecuador's capital, but also for the communities that are enduring the effects of war. Despite this demand, the ELN already said via Twitter that once the new dialogues begin in Quito on January 9th, they are open to negotiate a new ceasefire only if it solves the difficulties that the ELN is facing right now, especially regarding the monitor and verification system, since this mechanism was put in place to keep track of the incidents that could happen and was also responsible for giving recommendations to both parties so that any kind of problem could be avoided. The guerrilla group also said that the system collapsed because government representatives have made several decisions that go against the protocols agreed. As an example, they said the government took the ceasefire as the end of the conflict between both sides, but didn't work to implement humanitarian measures around different territories to help the communities, and hasn't recognized the responsibility of police forces in different clashes during the ceasefire period. Regarding this, the ELN referred to the Tumaco incidents, where several campesinos were killed in the hands of the anti-narcotic police while they were peacefully protesting. The ELN said that 40 violent incidents happened during the ceasefire, but only 5 were investigated, and that the Colombian government has referred to these incidents, despite the fact that monitor and verification system authorities are the only ones that can do that. The group has decided not to include any more delegates at the monitor and verification system. Gustavo Bell, the government's new chief negotiator in the peace talks with the ELN, said that he is talking to Juan Camilo Restrepo to know where the negotiations left off and is defining who is going to attend the meetings. One thing is clear, people are asking both parties to maintain the ceasefire, as this could be an opportunity for the government and the ELN to listen to the communities, to define the dialogue's agenda, and to give them a more participatory role in the coming peace talks.
That was Lorena Hoyos from Bogotá. And we'll be back very soon. Stay with us. More than 3 years on, the families of the 43 missing Ayotzinapa students have marched in Mexico City to honor their loved ones. The group of parents are also having a church service at the Basilica of Guadalupe. The 43 students were forcibly disappeared in the state of Guerrero in September of 2014, after they were stopped by the police and army on their way to a demonstration in the capital. The parents are still demanding a proper investigation. A man alleged to be behind the murder of crime reporter Miroslava Breach in northern Mexico last March has been arrested by federal police. According to the Chihuahua state governor, the suspect, identified as Juan Carlos Moreno Ochoa, was detained in the neighboring state of Sonora on Monday. However, Breach's family say the suspect is not the main person responsible for her death, and they accuse local political figures from the PRI and the PAN of ordering her killing. 21 sugar workers have been freed in northern Argentina after they were arrested during a protest last week. The sugar workers had occupied a bridge to demand unpaid wages and the rehiring of 400 SAC colleagues. At least 7 of the protesters were seriously injured when the police attacked them. The authorities said 4 other workers who were arrested would be released soon. Christmas has been a difficult time for Argentina's poor. The neoliberal policies imposed by President Mauricio Macri have caused a significant growth in poverty, and soup kitchens are struggling to cope. More details in the next report.
Every day, social movements organize soup kitchens and mobilize on the streets of Argentina. Public protests seem to be the only way of getting the food they need to make a decent meal.
Hoy por hoy es un comedor.
We have a crisis in the soup kitchens. There are more kids and parents coming now. There's so much need. We don't have enough food for so many people. We cannot give them a good portion of food. We just don't have enough anymore.
Workers in the social economy are staging intense days of protest and mobilization. They're demanding an end to layoffs and reject the pension and emergency laws that the current government is promoting and which affect the least privileged.
We are very aware that without the strength of popular organization, the sectors who suffer most wouldn't be expressing themselves on the streets. It's going to be very difficult for the poor because all measures that are being taken are affecting the lives of the poor.
To defend the rights already won isn't an easy task for the social movements after years of struggle. The government refuses to introduce a law of food emergency that would help to fight the desperate needs in poor neighborhoods.
We think that reforms by the government will tend to flexibilize even more workers' conditions and increase unemployment in the country.
The social movements accuse the government of Mauricio Macri of not having the will to pass the measure that would help to reduce hunger for thousands of Argentinians who are not able to spend a proper holiday.
This year's hurricane season is finally over and has proven to be one of the most violent in recent history, ranking among the top 7 most active on record. Let's take a look back at the impact the hurricane season had on the Caribbean.
A total of 10 hurricanes created havoc in the Caribbean region. 6 were major storms of Category 3 or higher, and 3 of those were Category 4 or higher when they made landfall. In September, Hurricane Irma hit the islands of Antigua, Barbuda, St. Martin, Anguilla, St. Kitts and Nevis, the U.S. Virgin Islands and the British Virgin Islands. Irma then moved on to Cuba, causing major damage. On the island of Barbuda, Hurricane Irma left complete devastation. An estimated 95% of structures were destroyed. 3 people were killed and the island was left without power or communications, leaving no choice but to evacuate the entire population of approximately 2,000 residents. Prime Minister Gaston Brown estimated that reconstruction would cost some $200 million and could take several years. Brown spoke to Telesur's Jorge Gestoso, where he described the situation after the passage of Hurricane Irma on the island as a humanitarian crisis.
It's a humanitarian crisis that is now consuming Antigua. As I said to you, Antigua got away unscathed, so it is business as usual in Antigua. But our sister island, Barbuda, that is 30 miles north of us, was just totally decimated to the extent that Barbuda today is a mangled wreck. Unfortunately, Barbuda will take some time to be fully rebuilt.
Venezuela immediately sent 10 tons of supplies to the Caribbean islands of Antigua and Barbuda, in addition to a roster of rescue personnel. Brown thanked Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro for his timely intervention during the hurricane, adding that he knew the Bolivarian nation would, quote, respond to the call of its Caribbean brothers.
First of all, let me start by commending President Maduro and the government and people of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. I have to admit that it is their timely intervention that would have helped to put us in the position that we're in today in terms of the response to Hurricane Irma.
The U.S. and British Virgin Islands did not fare much better after Irma hit the island chains on September the 6th. According to reports, shortly after Irma moved on, 70% of the U.S. Virgin Islands' infrastructure on St. Thomas was destroyed, and 100% of the utility system on the island of St. John. 40,000 people were left homeless. The Category 5 storm killed 5 people in the British Virgin Islands, and thousands were left without electricity and water. The British government was criticized for its slow response in assisting its overseas territory after the hurricanes. Eventually, the British government did send $42 million in assistance and aid flights to the British Virgin Islands and the Anguilla archipelago. The flights took medical supplies, emergency shelter kits, rations and clean water to affected islands, as well as engineers and military personnel. The next week, British Prime Minister Theresa May announced in Parliament more aid for Irma's victims, perhaps in response to the criticism her Conservative government received. But there was also an emphasis on military aid, soldiers and police, to protect property from what Britain called looting.
And today I'm announcing an additional £25 million to support the recovery effort, further to the £32 million of assistance I announced last week. We have now deployed over 1,000 military personnel to the region, with an additional 200 to arrive in the next few days, along with over 60 police. And more than 40 tons of aid has now arrived.
Dominica was only brushed by Hurricane Irma, but the island was not so lucky when Category 5 Hurricane Maria made landfall on September 19th. The storm is regarded as the worst natural storm ever to hit the island. In an exclusive interview with Telesur, Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit had this to say about the aftermath of this brutal storm.
Well, we have confirmed about 25 dead, and there are about 18 confirmed missing, and about another 17 unconfirmed missing. So you're talking about a significant number of people who would have perished as a result of Hurricane Maria.
A few days after Maria's deadly blow, improved weather had seen aid arrive to the island. But according to Prime Minister Skerrit, the country was still without electricity. Little by little, some services were restored, with help from the CARICOM countries, as well as Venezuela, Cuba, Palestine, France, Britain and others. After Dominica, Maria had Puerto Rico in its sights. The hurricane caused widespread damage on September 20th and subsequently a humanitarian crisis. Several weeks after the storm, most of the island's residents still lacked access to electricity and clean water. U.S. President Donald Trump's administration came under fire for its disorganized and tepid response. Telesur traveled to Puerto Rico and spoke with some of the residents who were doing their best to overcome the tragedy, with little to no federal assistance.
Here there's no electricity. Look at the light pole. We don't have any water or electricity here, and we haven't seen anyone fix it or clearing up the debris. We haven't seen water, just the water trucks that are helping us now.
Trump visited Puerto Rico briefly on October 3rd amid protests and complaints over his administration's response to the havoc. The hurricane not only affected the people on the island, but it also shed light on the complex political relationship between Puerto Rico and the mainland.
We've spent a lot of money on Puerto Rico, and that's fine. We've saved a lot of lives. If you look at the, every death is a horror. But if you look at a real catastrophe like Katrina, and you look at the tremendous hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that died, and you look at what happened here with really a storm that was just totally overpowering. Nobody's ever seen anything like this.
Trump came to insult the Puerto Ricans. This is what I think. I don't know what the others think. We, the Puerto Ricans, feel offended because of the things he said.
After the storms hit, the Caribbean islands look towards recovery. But recovery comes at a price. Most of the islands were already indebted to organizations such as the IMF, and despite the natural catastrophe, were still expected to repay their debt. An international donor conference was held at the United Nations in New York on November 21st to mobilize international resources for its member states devastated by hurricanes Irma and Maria. The Prime Minister of St. Lucia took the opportunity to vent his frustration over the bureaucracy and unfair international financial system the Caribbean region has to deal with in the wake of natural disasters.
That it seems that we're being asked to pay two prices. One, for being located where we are and on the front line of this climate change issue. And then two, to be further penalized by the level of bureaucracy that seems to be insensitive, regardless of the information that's available to all of us. And what is more painful about that bureaucracy is that this bureaucracy only requires a pen. That is the effort that we're asking from the world today to stop the procrastination and to help us deal and help us to help ourselves.
2017's hurricane season ended on November 30th, and it was one for the record books. The possibility of more extreme weather events is increasing as climate change escalates. Only when the next year's hurricane season returns will we see if the world's governments have learned any lessons at all for the future.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Now, here are some other stories that are making headlines around the world.
Liberians have gone to the polls to select either former international footballer George Weah or Vice President Joseph Boakai as their new president, in a vote that analysts say is too close to call. The vote was delayed by 7 weeks due to legal challenges against the country's electoral commission lodged by Boakai's party. Boakai said that he was confident in the electoral system, while Weah says he wants to send a message of stability.
It's a great day because it's a test of democracy. We went in one time, there were 20 of us. Now we reduced to 2. We have delayed, we've gone through the court process. This is what the process has produced. We're willing to live with it.
A message of peace and stability for our country. Today, Liberians will make their choice. They will choose their leader.
South Korean police have arrested the owner and the manager of a building where 29 people died in a fire on December 21st. The men are accused of multiple safety lapses, including blocked exits and malfunctioning sprinkler systems. If convicted of involuntary homicide, the pair, identified only as Lee and Kim, could face up to 5 years in prison or $16,000 in fines. The first round of the China, Afghanistan, Pakistan foreign ministers' dialogue was held in Beijing. The three countries have exchanged ideas on several topics, including political trust and reconciliation, development cooperation, and counterterrorism. China and Pakistan will look at extending their $57 billion China-Pakistan economic corridor to Afghanistan.
The successful implementation of CPAC projects will serve as a model for enhancing connectivity and cooperation through similar projects with neighboring countries, including Afghanistan, Iran, and with Central and West Asia.
Tropical storm Tembin has weakened while passing southern Vietnam and continues to lose strength as it headed westward, according to Vietnamese authorities. Nearly 1 million people were told to prepare for evacuation, and some 70,000 people were moved from low-lying areas to nearby schools. Tembin killed at least 240 people after passing through the Philippines. An Israeli court extended the custody of 3 Palestinian women on Monday who were detained after a viral video of an alleged assault on Israeli soldiers in the occupied West Bank. In the viral video, the footage shows the women approaching 2 Israeli soldiers before shoving, kicking and slapping them while filming on mobile phones. Scores of runners took part in the 19th annual Roast Goose Digestion Run in Berlin, aiming to burn all the calories after all the holiday celebrations with the 10-kilometer run. Roast goose, which is not light on calories, is a traditional Christmas food in Germany, served with red cabbage, kale and potato dumplings. According to organizers, 220 people took part in the run.
And Mexico's renowned nativity displays do of course recall the birth of Jesus, but they also celebrate the creativity of the craftsmen who designed them and draw on a rich mixture of indigenous and Spanish influences. We have more in the next report.
According to the Catholic belief, it was San Francisco de Assis who introduced the nativity or Christmas display. Legend has it that people and animals were part of this representation, but today's craftsmen elaborate each piece with great artistic value.
Local craft making is part of our cultural identity. It's something that we pass down from generation to generation, and it is as important as our pre-Hispanic heritage, as well as our colonial heritage. Local craft making is part of our people, of our roots and our traditions.
Figures of baby Jesus, Mary, Joseph, the Archangel, the 3 wise men, and the shepherds are designed with creativity and various interpretations that include details and elements, reflecting the influence of their Mexican roots.
It's our tradition, something that we identify with as Mexicans. We all want to have a nativity display in our house.
Nativity displays can be monumental and very colorful. For example, in the Iturbide Palace in downtown Mexico City, people can visit an exhibition of more than 3,000 figures from 21 states around the country and 19 Latin American countries.
This speaks about our own traditions and who we are as Mexicans. It speaks about the syncretic religion that we developed with the Spanish conquest. We can lose this.
The Museo del Carmen, located in the south of the capital, has become an important exhibition place for local crafts. Visitors can find nativity displays made out of unusual materials.
We have a great tradition regarding the use of different materials. Mexican craftsmen are incredibly creative. You can give him any type of fiber and he can build a nativity display.
Nativity displays today are very similar to those built during the 19th century. Their presence in Mexican homes bring families together and join them all the way until the end of the year.
We've come to the end of this evening news brief. This and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And you can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.
Pakistani journalist Tariq Ali examines the mass media influence promoted by imperialists